the sub a while back, you learned bottoms up. So when do we do which? Because both of them solve quadratics. We kind of talked about this a little bit last class. Does anyone remember when should we factor and when should we square root? Or who can give me an example?
Maybe.
Looking at us from last class. Yeah, Ryan, what do you think?
It's when you're trying to find like solutions or roots or something.
That's always our goal. That's what solve means. So our goal is always to find the solutions. Remember the roots or the x-intercepts, okay? But then we learn two different ways. Yeah, close.
Okay.
You're on the right track. Do what, Avery?
If you have more than one x.
Avery. Not quite.
If you have more than one x.
We
If you
usually
x
have more than one
squared
x.
and an x.
Correct. There it is. If there's an x term. So, for example, we would factor this, right? So what factors of 4 add up to 4?
1 and 4.
2 and 2, right?
1 and 4.
1 and 4 adds up to 5. Bingo. So the big difference is this right here. If that's not there, so a couple of them that we did last class kind of looked like this. What's missing?
The X.
The x. The x term in the middle. And if there's no x term in my way, what can I just go straight to doing?
The root.
SADMAP, right? 8th grade. So what do I do first to solve for x?
Subtract.
Plus 4.
Plus 4. So now we have x squared equals 4. How do I undo a square?
Square root.
Square root. But what do we have to remember? How many answers do we have?
2.
2. Ones,
Positive.
positive ones,
Negative.
negative. So our final answer would be plus or minus 2. So if there's no x in your way, just go back to 8th grade. If there is an x in your way, that's when we need to do bottoms up, which was actually technically 8th grade. I'll let you decide on that one. All right, a few things. Did we do this?
I didn't either way, so.
We did it before.
I'll be happy.
4
Yeah, we
and
already
5.
have those done.
We did do 4 and 5.
We did?
Right, we need to go to 6, right?
It's spicy.
Okay, I want you to take a second. If you need to refresh your memory, read the top. Look at what we did on 4 and 5. And I want you to give 6 and 7 a go on your own real quick. Austin.
Okay,
Hi.
so
Say hi.
so I just factored it out. I didn't really do many steps. I just kind of put 3x minus 4 and 1 parentheses and 3x plus 4.
Yeah, you did the shortcut from last class. You guys remember our shortcut? It's called the difference of two perfect squares. What does difference mean?
Subtract.
Subtract. What's a perfect square?
Anything that.
A number times itself is that number. So what times what is 9?
3.
What times what is x squared? X. What times what is 16? So if this happens, you can use this little shortcut. It's always 1's plus, 1's minus. 1's plus, 1's minus. And then what times what is 9?
3.
That goes in the front. So 3x and 3x. What times what is 16?
4.
Now if you do the zero product property and you set these equal to 0,
Well, it's the same thing.
subtract 4 over, divide by 3, what's our answer?
It's not really much of a
Negative 4/3 and positive.
Actually, 6 longer.
Okay? You get the exact same answer.
Plus 15 was divided by
Okay? So now let's do number 7 that way. First of all, there is a GCF on number 7. What is it?
2.
So you might be thinking at first, oh wait, 2's not a perfect square. I can't do the difference of 2 squares. But if you factor out the GCF, what's left behind?
Yeah.
X squared and 9.
X squared minus 9. And this is a difference of 2 squares, right? What times what is x squared?
3.
X. What times what is 9?
3.
3. So 2 is out front. We do our little shortcut, x plus 3 x minus 3. Now we've talked about this before. Does the 2 out front give me an answer? If I set 2 equal to 0, do I get an answer out of that?
No.
No. But if you set this equal to 0, you'll get x is negative 3. And if you set this equal to 0, x is positive 3. So regardless of how you do it, you'll get the exact same answer.
Oh, okay.
You would add 18 over. Divide by 2 is 9.
Still right.
Square root of 9 is positive negative.
I thought I did it wrong first, and then I realized I did. I just did it a different way.
Do it.
What does summing
Addition.
plus, and once again a perfect square we know. What's the only difference between this and what we just did? The plus sign. And the plus sign creates a problem. So at first it says, can we factor this using bottoms up? So let's think about it for a second. Write this down. X squared plus 0x plus 9. Right, there's no x's, so I can think of it as 0 x's. So that's the same thing. X squared plus 9 is x squared plus 0x plus 9. So now let's do a bottoms up. So what is A times C? 9. What's the only way, one of two ways, to multiply and get a positive number? A negative times a negative, or a positive times a positive. Are there any factors of 9 that cancel out? They add up to 0.
Yeah.
So what's one way we can multiply to get 9? 3 and 3, right? But what's 3 plus 3? 6. That's not 0. What about negative 3 and negative 3?
0.
Negative 3 plus negative 3 is going further negative. That's negative 6. You could do 9 and 1, maybe. But does 9 plus 1 add up to 0? And negative 9 and negative 1 don't add up to 0. So are there any factors of 9 that add up to 0? No. The reason we can do this when it's a minus sign is because this is a negative 9. And how do we multiply to get a negative number? A positive and a negative. That's what allows us to cancel out, right? But when the negative is gone, it doesn't work anymore. So, no. We cannot factor this using bottoms up. It doesn't work. There are no factors of 9 that add up to 0. Step 2, it says, what if we set the quadratic equal to 0 and solve? So let's do that. X squared plus 9 equals 0. So what would I do first? Let's do our square root method. So get x by itself, we would
Subtract
9. I know you don't have a ton of room, but
Fine.
So now we have x squared equals negative 9. Uh-oh, I sense a problem.
It'll be I.
So now we square root both sides. Don't forget your immediate plus or minus. But what's the square root of negative 9?
Imaginary number.
It's 3i.
Yeah. Right.
So the reason it doesn't factor is because it's imaginary. And do you remember what a quadratic looks like when it has imaginary solutions? It's on the front of your page, or at the page at the very top. Look at the 3 scenarios. What does it mean for a quadratic to have imaginary solutions? There's no x-intercepts. That's why you can't solve it. There's no x-intercepts. That's why we're having all these problems. It doesn't factor. I'm getting I as an answer. So number 3 says the solutions are the x-intercepts of the graph. And it says check it in your calculator. So if I typed into my calculator really quickly, you don't have to do this. X squared plus 9. Does this cross the x-axis? No, it's up here, so I'm going to change my window to the y-max to like 20. Oh, I changed it to 2. No! Stop laughing at me. So does this parabola ever cross the x-axis? No, that's why we're not getting any answers. We're getting imaginary solutions. So number 4, this is how we're going to do this. Let's say I got x equals 3 as an answer. What was the factor? X. If x equals 3 is the answer, what was in the factor? X minus 3. Right? It's the opposite. If my answer was x equals negative 5, what was the factor that it came from? X plus 5. Right? If I set that equal to 0, I get negative 5. So if I get a real answer, I just put it back into my factor. Well, we're not going to do anything different. What were the answers we just got from number 3?
3i.
3i and negative 3i. So we're going to put those in the factors. What? And that's your answer. That's how we would factor a sum of squares. So what's the only difference between a difference of squares and a sum of squares?
Yeah, you can't do it.
Sum, we have to put what letter? I. Now, you can check your work by factoring, by FOILing. What's x times x?
X squared.
X squared.
Plus 3ix minus 3ix. Okay, now this is good review. You're about to take a snapshot. What is negative times a positive? Negative. And what's 3i times 3i?
9i squared.
But it's positive.
So what happens in the middle?
We cancel.
Doesn't matter, they cancel. What this is minus 9 times what? What's I squared?
Negative 1.
What's negative 9 times negative 1? And we get back to where we started. So if you ever see a sum of squares, the way you factor it is the same thing as difference of squares, but you have to put an I. Clear for this. You need your Chromebook out. You also need some scratch paper.
Oh, yeah.
Quickly, we don't have a lot of time.
Oh no!
I'm going.
Did you guys get an email from me from Edulastic?
No.
No.
I have not.
Let's see if this works.
Here.
Access to my job.
Can I borrow
My profile picture like changes every day. I'm just saying.
How other does? You know?
Hey, what is it right now?
Oh no.
You guys, let's go. We don't have a lot of time. Edulastic.com and log in with your Gmail, your Google.
The creeper from Scooby-Doo.
You will need scratch paper.
I don't know that was wrong.
Log in.
Yeah,
Log in.
Log, but I got it.
Should be able to just log in.
Hey, Alexa.
Hey, you could have beat one.
I don't know.
My Java.
Jason went from a charger. I don't.
Gotta go.
For free.
Said something about Java.
Bro, why would you load?
Tyler.
Thank Hey. Okay, I'll see you later.
Steven.
That's right.
Join for free.
Join for free.
Click log. Do not click join for free. Click log in
You want me to start this?
and then log in with Google. As soon as you're in, hit start assignment and go.
Hurry
You will
up
need
and
scratch
go.
paper.
Was it,
Like police.
Sketchy stuff. I don't trust it.
Freaking long. I'm going to die before I finish this freaking
Here we go.
oh,
bed.
Yeah.
I hate technology.
oh, yeah. Sorry.
That
No,
is so funny.
I love.
I kind of like this
Should not be
picture.
talking. There is a Snapchat going on.
So I will